World of Warcraft, Rise of the Horde by Christy Golden. Chapter 4. Last night, with the moon full overhead and the stars gleaming as if in approval, a young male was initiated into adulthood. It was the first time I have ever had the chance to be part of this ritual, the Omragor. In my early years, I was cut off from the rites and traditions of my people. And truth be told, all orcs have been cut off from such rites for too long. And once I'd set my feet on my destiny's path, I had become embroiled in battle. War consumed me. Ironically, the need to protect my people from the Burning Legion and to give them a place where our traditions could again flourish took me far away from these things. But now, Durotan and Orgim are established. Now there is a peace. Tenuous, though it might be. Now there are shamans reclaiming the ancient ways, young males and females coming of age who, if the spirits will, may never know the ashy taste of war. Last night, I predicted in a timeless ritual that had been denied an entire generation. Last night, my heart was filled with joy and the sense of connection for which I had always longed. Durotan's heart hammered in his chest as he stared at the Talbuk. It was a mighty beast, worthy prey, its horns not for mere decoration but sharp and dangerous. Durotan had seen at least one warrior gored to death, impaled on the 12 prongs as surely as if upon a spear. And he was to take one down with only a single weapon and no armor. There had been the whispers, of course. Any mature Talbuk will do to satisfy the needs of the ritual, he had heard someone murmur in his ear as he sat blindfolded in the waiting tent. They're all fierce fighters, but at this season the males have shed their horns. Another whispers, he may only carry one weapon, Durotan, son of Garad, but you could hide leather armor in the wilderness where no one would know. And most shameful of all, the shaman will determine if you are successful by tasting the blood on your face. The blood from a long-dead Talbuk tastes exactly like that one of freshly slain. He ignored all the temptations. Perhaps there had been other orcs who had succumbed to them, but he would not be among them. Durotan would seek out a female who was quite well equipped with horns at this time of year. He would take the one weapon he was permitted, and would be the blood of the beast he had killed, steamed in the cold air that would anoint his cheeks. And now, standing in the early, unexpected fall of snow, his axe growing ever heavier in his hand, Durotan shivered, but he never faltered. He had been tracking the Talbuk herd for 2 days now, surviving only on what he could gather, creating meager fires in the twilight that bathed the snow in a rich lavender hue, and sleeping in what shelter he stumbled upon. Orgrim had already completed his rite of passage. Durotan envied the fact that his friend had been born in summer. He had thought it would still not be too difficult in early autumn, but winter had decided to come ahead of time, and the weather was bitter. It seemed as if the Talbuk herd too was taunting him. He could come up upon their tracks and droppings easy enough, see where they had scraped the snow for dried grass or pulled bark from the trees, but they always seemed to elude him. It was late afternoon on the third day when it appeared as though the ancestors had decided to reward his determination. Twilight was coming, and Durotan had thought, with a sinking heart, that he would have to again seek shelter to mark the end of a fruitless day. Then he realized that the small pellets of dung were not frozen hard, but fresh. They were close. He began to run, the snow squeaking beneath his furred boots, a new warmth filling him. He followed the tracks as he had been taught, cleared to arise, and beheld a herd of glorious creatures. Immediately he crouched behind a large boulder and peered around to gaze at the beasts. They were still dark brown against the white snow, their winter coats not yet upon them. There were at least 24, maybe more, mostly females. It was good that he had found the herd, but now he had another problem. How would he take down just one? Talbuk, unlike many prey animals, would protect others in the herd. If he attacked one, the rest would come to defend it. Shaman accompanied hunters in order to distract the animals. Durotan was alone, and suddenly he felt very vulnerable. He frowned and rallied himself. He had been searching for these creatures for almost 3 days, and now here they were. Nightfall would see a fresh hunch of meat devoured by a hungry orc youth, or would see a stiffened orc corpse in the snow. He watched them for a while, aware that the shadows were lengthening, but not wanting to hurry and make a fatal mistake. The Talbuk were diurnal creatures, and they were busy digging hollows in the snow in which to curl up. He knew they did such thing, but now he watched in dismay as they settled in tightly against one another. How would he separate one? Movement caught his eye. One of the females, young and healthy from a gentle summer spent feasting on sweet grass and berries, seemed to be in a feisty mood. She stamped and tossed her head, crowned with glorious sets of horn, and almost danced around the others. She did not seem inclined to join them, but like one or two others, opted to sleep on the outside of the cluster of furry bodies. Durotan began to grin. What an offering from the spirits. It was a good omen. The liveliest, healthiest doe in the herd, and the one who did not need to follow mindlessly but choose her own path. While that path would likely be her death, it would also give Durotan a chance to win his honor and right to be treated as an adult. The spirits understood the balance of such things. At least, he was told they did. Durotan waited. Twilight came and went, and the sun sank below the mountains. With the sun went even the feeble warmth it had hitherto provided. Durotan waited with the patience of the predator. Finally, even the edgiest of the herd Talbuk tucked up its long legs, bedded down with its fellows. At last, Durotan moved. His limbs were stiff, and he almost stumbled. He crept slowly from his hiding place behind the boulder and went down the slope, his eyes on the drowsing female. Her head drooped on its long neck, and her breathing was regular. He could see small white puffs appear in front of her muzzle. Slowly placing his feet as carefully as he could, he moved towards his quarry. He did not feel the cold, the heat of the anticipation. The powerful focus drove any sensation of discomfort away. Closer still he came, and still the Talbuk doe dreamed. He lifted his axe and swung it down. Her eyes opened. She tried to scramble to her feet, but the death blow had already come. Durotan wanted to scream the battle cry he had heard his father utter so many times, but he bit it back. It would not do to slay the Talbuk only to be slain himself by a dozen of her herd in retaliation. Dozen of her herd in retaliation. He had sharpened the blade to shocking keenness, and it sliced through the thick neck and vertebrae as if slicing through cheese. Blood spurted, the warm, sticky fluid sputtering. Blood spurted, the warm, sticky fluid splattering Durotan gently, and he smiled fiercely. Anointing himself with the blood of his first solo kill was part of the ritual. The Talbuk doe had done it for him, another good omen. Silent though as he tried to be, he heard the sounds of the awakening herd. He whirled, breathing heavily, and let loose the blood-chilling battle cry his throat had been aching to utter. He held his axe, the gleam of the metal blade now obscured with crimson blood, and bellowed again. The Talbot hesitated. He had been told that if it was a clean kill, they would flee rather than attack. Intriguing intuiting on some primal level that they could no longer help their fallen sister. He hoped this was true. He might be able to take down one or two, but would fall beneath their padded feet if they chose to attack. Moving as one, they began to back away, and then finally whirled and turned to run. He watched them gallop over the rise to disappear, the paw prints in the pristine snow, the only evidence they had ever been here. Durotan lowered his axe. Panting with exertion, he raised it again and let out a cry of triumph. His empty belly would be full tonight. The spirit of the Talbot would enter his dreams. On the morrow, he would return to his people, an adult male, ready to take his place in serving the clan, ready to one day become leader. Why do we not ride? Durotan asks, presently growing like a child. Because that is not the way it is done, Mother Kirscher said, curtly. Irritated, she cuffed the boy. Durotan was young and fit. The lengthy height to the sacred mountain of the ancestors was nothing to him. She, on the other hand, would have deeply appreciated being able to ride atop her great black wolf Dreamwalker. But the traditions were ancient and specific, and as long as she was able to walk she would. Durotan bowed his head in acknowledgment as they continued on. Despite the fact that each trip exhausted her more than the previous one, Mother Kesher felt a sense of excitement that helped temper the pain and weariness. She had taken many a youngling, both male and female, for each was as valued as the other, on this final part of their rite of adulthood. But never before had she been asked to bring one before the ancestors. She was not too old to be curious. It was less than a few hours for the young, about a day for the older bones to make the trip. Evening was coming, and they were almost there. Mother Cashier looked upon the familiar shape of the mountain and smiled. Unlike other mountain ranges, whose angles seemed to be random, Ashugan's spire was a perfect triangle, gleaming like crystal, its faces catching the sun. It resembled the surrounding terrain not at all. It had come from the heavens long ago, and the spirits had been drawn to it. It was for this reason the orcs had settled here, in this sacred shadow. Whenever squabbles and petty differences they had, as living beings, they were as one here inside the mountain. She would go there again soon, she knew, but not as a hobbling, elderly woman. This was her last visit to such a broken vessel. The next time Kesher approached Ashugan, she would come as a spirit, floating in the air as the birds did, her heart light and clean and made anew. "What is wrong, mother?" Durotan asked, concern in his young voice. She blinked, coming out of her revive, and smiled at him. "Not a thing," she assured him, truthfully. The shadows had chased away the sunlight by the time they reached the foot of the mountain. They would sleep here tonight and begin their ascent at dawn. Durotan fell asleep first, wrapped in the hide of the Talbot doe he himself slain not too long ago, and Mother Kesher watched him fondly as he slept, the deep sleep of the innocent. She herself would have no dreams. Her mind needed to be clear if she were ready to receive visions of the morrow. The climb was a long one, tiring. The climb was a long, tiring one. Harder by far than the simple hike to reach the mountain. Kesher was grateful for both her sturdy staff and Durotan's strong hand. But today Kesher's feet seemed to move more surely. Her lungs worked more efficiently as she and her young charge climbed. She felt as if the ancestors were pulling her forward, aiding her physical body with the power of their spirit ones. They paused at the entrance to the sacred cave. It was a perfect oval in the smooth surface of the mountain, and as always, Kashir felt though she were entering the womb of the earth. Durotan tried to look brave, but succeeded only in looking slightly nervous. Mother Kashir did not smile at him. He should be nervous. He was about to enter sacred space at a specific request of one of his long-dead ancestors. Even she was not unmoved. She lit a bundle of dry grass and gave off a sweet, pungent scent and waved the smoke over him to purify him. She then marked him with the blood of his own father had shed for this moment, kept carefully in a small stoppered leather bag. Kesher placed her Kesha placed her withered hand upon his smooth, low brow, murmured her blessing, and then nodded. You well know that few are called before the ancestors who do not walk the path of the shaman, she said, gravely. Brown eyes wide, Durotan nodded. I do not know what will happen. Maybe nothing. But if something occurs, you know to be brave, to behave with honor, and respect the beloved dead. Durotan swallowed and nodded again. Then he took a deep breath and stood straight and tall, and in that yet unmolded body of the boy, Kesher saw a hint of the clan chieftain to come. Together, they went inside. Mother Kesher going first to light the torches that lined the walls. The orange illumination showed them the downward twinning path, worn smooth by years of bare or booted orc feet. Here and there, steps had been carved to make those pilgrims' feet more secure. It was always cool inside this tunnel, warmer than it was outside in winter. Kesher let her hand brush the sides of the wall, remembering the first time she had come here long ago, the blood of her mother wet on her own face, her eyes wide, her heart racing. Finally, the long, gentle downward slope eased. There were no more torches on the wall to light, and Durotan looked at her puzzled. We will not need to bring fire to come before the ancestors, Kesha said. They continued on a level surface, traveling into darkness. Durotan was not frightened, but he did look confused as they left the comfort of fire behind. Now it was completely dark. Kesha reached out a hand and grasped Durotan to guide him. His strong, stubby fingers folded gently around hers. Even now, when he might be expected to clutch my hand, he remembers how it aches, she thought. The next Frostwood chieftain would have a considerate heart. They continued without speaking, and then, suddenly, like the arrival of dawn after a long dark night, light began to glow around them. Now Kashir could dimly see the shape of the youth who stood beside her, so much younger than she and yet already walking in the body of a grown male. She watched him as they moved forward. The miracle of the Cave of the Ancestors was familiar to her, but Durotan's reaction was not. His eyes widened and he inhaled swiftly as he looked around. The glowing emanation from the pool in the center of the cavern casting a soft white light over everything. All was smooth and soft and dimly radiant. There were no sharp angles or rough places, and Kashir felt the familiar sensation of deep peace wash over her. She let Durotan look his fill in silence. The cavern was huge, larger than the main drumming and dancing area of the Koshagah festival, and branching tunnels led to places that Keshir had never dared explore. It would have to be so large, it would not. It would have to be so large, would it not? To be able to host the spirit of every orc who had lived and died. She walked to the water, and he followed her, watching her closely. She removed the pack she carried and gestured that he do likewise. Carefully, Keshir removed several water skins, opened them, and with a soft prayer added their water to the glowing liquid. You asked about the water skins as we departed, she said quietly to Durotan. The water in here is not native to this place. Long ago we began offering blessed water to the spirits. Every time we come, we contribute to the sacred pool. And even so, I do not know how the water does not dissipate as it would in an ordinary hollow. Such is the power of the Mountain of Spirits. Once she had emptied the water skin, she sat down with a soft grunt and peered into the luminous depths. Durotan emulated her. She knew the angle at which she could see her reflection and made sure they were both positioned correctly. At first, all she could see was her own face and that of Durotan. Their features looked spectral themselves, reflected in the white pool rather than the dark one. Then a third figure joined them, as if Grandfather Takra were standing right beside her shoulder. His reflection as clear as theirs, their eyes met, and Keshia smiled. She craned her neck up to look at him, but Durotan continued to gaze into the water as if searching for the answer there. Keshia's heart sank a little, but immediately she reprimanded herself. If Durotan was not of the shamanic path, then he was not of the shamanic path. Surely his destiny would be an honorable one regardless. Born to lead his clan as he had been. My many times great-granddaughter, Talcross said, with more gentleness than Keshir had ever heard from him before. You have brought him as I asked. Leaning heavily on a staff as insubstantial as he, the spirit of the grandfather moved in a slow circle around Durotan as the young orc continued to look into the water. Keshir watched both Frostwood males closely. Durotan shivered and looked about, no doubt wondering where the sudden chill came from. Keshir smiled to herself. He could not see his ancestor's spirit, but he knew somehow that Talcraw was there. You cannot see him, she said, a bit sadly. Durotan's head came up, and his nostrils flared. Swiftly he got to his feet. In the eerie light his tusk looks blue, and his skin had a green cast to it. No, mother, I cannot. But is an ancestor present? Indeed he is, Kesha said. She turned her attention to the ghost. I did bring him here as you requested. How do you find him? Durotan swallowed hard, but remained standing straight and tall as the spirit circled him thoughtfully. I sensed something, Talcott said. I thought he would be a shaman, but if he cannot see me now, then he never will. But although he will not see spirits or summon the elements, he is born into a great destiny. He will be an important asset to the Frostwood clan. Indeed, to all his people. He will be a hero, Kesha asked, her breath catching. All orcs strove to uphold a code of courage and honor, but only a few were powerful enough to have their names engraved upon the memory of their descendants. At her words, Durotan inhaled swiftly, and she could see the wanting on his face. I cannot tell, said Talcra, frowning a little. Teach him well, Kesher, for one thing is certain. From his line will come salvation. In a gesture of tenderness, the likes of which Kesher had never seen, Talcra reached out and brushed an insubstantial finger across Durotan's cheek. Durotan's eyes went wide, and Kesher could see he had to fight the natural instinct to draw back. But Durotan did not quail beneath the spectral caress. Then, like mist on a hot day, Talcra was gone. Kesher stumbled a little. She always forgot how the energy of the spirits fed her. Durotan stepped forward quickly to catch her arm, and she was grateful for his youthful strength. Mother, are you all right? He asked. She gripped his arm and nodded. His first concern was not for her, not for what the ancestors might or might have said about him. No. His first concern was for her, not for what the ancestors might or might not have said about him. She, even as she pondered the words, she decided not to tell Durotan of them. Level-headed and great-hearted though he was, such a prophecy could corrupt even the truest of orc hearts. From his line will come salvation. I am all right, she reassured him. But these bones are no longer young, and the energy of the spirits is powerful. I wish I could have seen him, Durotan said, a bit wistfully. But I know I felt him. You did, and that is more than most are honored with, Kesha said. Mother, can you tell me what he said about me being a hero? He was trying to act calm and mature, but a note of pleading crept in. She did not blame him. All wanted to live on in glorious memory through tales told of their adventures. He would not be an orc if he did not share that desire. Grandfather Taraka said it was uncertain, she said bluntly. He nodded and hid his disappointment well. That much was all she had planned to say, but something moved her to add. You have a destiny to fulfill, Durotan, son of Garad. Be not a fool in battle, and die before you can fulfill it. He chuckled then. A fool does not serve his clan well, and that is what I wish to do. Then, future chieftain, said Kusher, chuckling also, you had best be about finding a mate. And she laughed out loud. For the first time upon their journey together, Durotan looked completely unnerved. Chapter 5. Upon reflection, so Drekthar tells me, this time in our history was a perfect day in early summer. We orcs had everything we truly needed. A hospitable world, the ancestors to guide us, the elements to aid us as they saw fit. Food was plentiful. Our enemies were fierce but not invincible, and we were rich with blessings. If the Draenei were not necessarily our allies, neither were they our foes. They shared their knowledge and their bounty whenever they were asked. It was we, the orcs, who always held back. And it is we, the orcs, who would unwittingly be twisted to serve another's end. Hate is powerful. Hate can be eternal. Hate can be manipulated. And hate can be created. In the darkness visible, ageless, timeless Kil'jaeden dwelt. The power surged and throbbed through him, better than blood now, more nourishing than meat or drink, heady and calming at the same time. He was not omnipotent, not yet. or else worlds would fall before him with a thought rather than through battle and destruction. And on the whole, he was content with this. But they yet lived, the exiles. Kil'jaeden could sense them through centuries. Though centuries had passed, according to those whom time still mattered, they were lying low. Velen and the rest of the fools, too cowardly to face him and Archimonde, who had worked as his friend and ally through the changes, as he had when they were simple beings. When Archimonde and the others no longer thought of themselves as Eredar, Velen would call them Minari. But they called themselves the Burning Legion, Sargeras' army, the Chosen One. He extended a scarlet hand, long and elegant, and clawed into the nothingness that was everything, and felt it ripple beneath his inquiry. Scouts had been dispatched the moment the enemy had escaped. Scouts who reported nothing but failure. Archimonde wanted them to die for the lack of success, but Kil'jaeden opted otherwise. Those who feared fled. He had good cause to know. Those who sniffed reward, and their lord's approval stayed, hungering for it. So, while Kil'jaeden made his disapproval known, those who had failed him usually got a second chance. Or a third if he believed them to be doing all they could and not simply coasting on his goodwill. Archimonde disagreed on this obsession that occupied Kil'jaeden. There are worlds aplenty to conquer and devour in service of our master Sargeras, Archimonde rumbled. The blackness glowed around them as his voice pierced it. Let the fools go. We would sense it if he had used his talons on any level that would pose a threat. Let him rot on some world, bereft of everything that mattered to him. Kil'jaeden slowly turned his massive head to regard the other demon lord. It is not about rendering him powerless, Kil'jaeden hissed. It is about destroying him and those foolish enough to have followed him. It is about crushing him for his lack of faith, for his stubbornness, for his refusal to think about what was best for all of us. The large clawed hand turned into a fist, and the sharp nails dug into the palm. Molten fire poured forth, then the flow stopped as it hit what passed for air. Leaving a thick ridge like a scar, Kil'jaeden's body was covered in many such welts. He took pride in them. Archimonde was powerful, elegant, smooth, intelligent, but he lacked the burning desire for utter obliteration that Kil'jaeden nursed. He had explained it time and again, and now simply sighed and opted not to discuss the matter further. For centuries now, they had this argument. No doubt they would continue to have it for centuries more. Or until Kil'jaeden succeeded in the destruction of the being who had once been his closest friend. Perhaps that was it. Kil'jaeden mused with a sudden enlightenment. Archimonde had never had particular feelings for Jaden other than as a fellow leader. For Velen other than a fellow leader of the Eredar. Kil'jaeden had loved Velen as a brother. Closer than that, loved him almost as another aspect of himself. And then, again the huge hand clenched, and again unholy fire poured forth in lieu of blood. No. It would not be enough to think of Velen sitting on some backwater world, nursing his hurt pride, living off the land in some cave. Kil'jaeden once would have said he wanted blood. But blood, powerful in its own way, as it was, would not satisfy him now. He wanted the essence of shame, of utter and complete humiliation. That would be even sweeter than the coppery taste of life flowing from Velen and his stupid followers. Archimonde tilted his head, a gesture Kil'jaeden recognized. One of his own servants was speaking to him. Archimonde had his own schemes and machinations, machinations, all like Kil'jaeden's, in service to the Dark Master and his ultimate conquest. Without a word, Archimonde rose to his full imposing height and departed, his movements light and sleek, belying his size. At that moment, as well, Kil'jaeden felt a slight scratching inside his head. He recognized it at once. It was Talgoth, ever his right hand seeking contact, and the sensation emanated from the thought was one of cautious hope. "What is it, my friend? Speak," Kil'jaeden commanded in his mind. "My great lord, I do not wish to plant false hope, but I may have found them." Tempered delight rose inside Kil'jaeden. Like the being being hunted, Talgoth was ever the cautious one of his minions. Only a little lower in rank than Kil'jaeden himself, he had proved his loyalty over the centuries. He would not say even this guarded statement without good cause. "Where? And what makes you sense this?" "There is a small world, primitive and insignificant, and I have sensed their particular brand of magic tainting the area. It is possible that they may have come and gone. Such, alas, has happened before." Kil'jaeden nodded. Even though Talgoth was not present to see the gesture, some things from his past yet lingered, he thought, smiling a little at the ancient movement that betokened agreement in nearly every sentient species he had encountered. "You speak truly," he acknowledged. Many times before, Kil'jaeden's forces had arrived on some world or other, lulled by the sweet essence of Eredar magic, only to find that somehow Velen and his wretched followers had gotten wind of the approach and escaped. "But I remain hopeful. I will find them and twist them to my purpose, and I have eternity in which to do so." A thought occurred to him. So often before, Kil'jaeden's forces had descended upon a world where Velen was thought to be, only to have him escape. Kil'jaeden had nursed his insulted pride by destroying such worlds, but the slaughter of primitive races, though pleasant, did not slay his demonic thirst for complete and total revenge. He would not behave that way this time. He would not send Talgoth at the head of the Burning Legion. Velen had once been the strongest of them, the wisest, the most attuned to magic and science. Kil'jaeden could not imagine that his old friend would have dropped his guard, not after such a relatively brief time. Velen would be consistently on the alert, ready to flee in the face of so obvious a threat. But what about a less obvious threat? "Talgoth, I want you to investigate this world for me." "My lord?" Talgoth's mental voice was smooth and poised, but puzzled. "We have descended upon worlds in force before, and to no avail. Perhaps this time only one is sent. Only one, but one who can be trusted completely." Kil'jaeden sensed unease and pride wearing in Talgoth's thoughts. "There are more ways to destroy one's enemy than with an army. There are more ways to destroy one's enemy than with an army. Sometimes those ways are better." You wish me to find such a better way, then?" "Precisely. Visit this place on your own. Learn about it. Investigate. Tell me if the exiles are truly there, and if so, what their state is. Tell me what they live on, if they are fat and settled like tame livestock, or lean and edgy like prey animals. Tell me what the world is like, what other peoples live there, what creatures, what seasons. Investigate, Talgoth. Do nothing without express orders from me. Of course, my lord. I shall prepare at once. Still puzzled, but obedient and intelligent, Talgoth has served the Minari master well in the past, but now he served well again. Kil'jaeden's face, though it little resembled what it had been before he had cast his lot with the great Lord Sargeras, was able to twist into a fascinating of a smile. Durotan, like all his people, had been ready to begin training with weapons at the age of 6. His body was already tall and filling out, and the usage of weaponry came natural to his people. At 12, he had gone with the hunting parties, and now, after the rite that marked him as an adult, he'd been able to join in the hunt for the ogres and their obscene, twisted masters, the Gron. This year, as the autumn Koshara came, he joined the adults in the circle after the children had been sent to bed. And as he and Orgrim had learned years before being an adult and being able to attend the fireside circle, was not very interesting. However, the one thing he did find interesting, as he watched with observant brown eyes, was interacting with those whose names he had known for many years, but never spoken much to him because of his youth. Mother Keshur, of course, was from his own clan. He knew she had high standing among the shaman of other clans, and he took pride in that fact. He noticed her huddled by the fire on his first night, a woven blanket wrapped around a frame that seemed a little more than bone and skin. He knew, without knowing how he knew, that this would be her last Koshka celebration, and the thought saddened him more than he expected. Next to her, younger than she, but older still than Durotan's parents, was Kersha's apprentice, Drekthar. Durotan had not spoken much with Drekthar, but the older orc's sharp tongue and sharp eyes were deserving of much respect. Durotan's brown eyes continued to roam over the assembled company. Tomorrow the shaman would be gone, departing for their meetings with the ancestors in the cavern of the sacred mountain. Durotan shivered as he again recalled his visit there, and the cold breeze that felt like a draft, but was nothing so ordinary. Over there was Gramash Hellscream, the young and slightly manic chieftain of the Warsong clan. Only a few older than Durotan and Orgrim, he was new to his position. There had been mutterings about the mysterious circumstances under which the former chieftain had died, but the Warsong clan did not challenge Gramash's leadership. Durotan thought it no wonder. Though youthful, Gramash was intimidating. The dancing, flickering light of the fire only served to make him look more menacing. His thick black hair flowed down his back. Upon his ascension to chieftain, Grom's jaw had been tattooed a uniform shade of black. Around his neck hung a necklace of bones. Durotan knew their meaning. Among the Warsong, it was tradition that a young warrior wear the bones of his first kill, inscribed with his personal runes. Beside Gramash was the enormous, imposing Black Hand of the Black Rock clan. Next to Black Hand, munching in the silence, was the chieftain of the Shattered Hand clan, Kargath Bloodfist. In lieu of a hand, he had a scythe embedded into his wrist, and even now, as an adult, Durotan found him unsettled as the blade glinted in the firelight. Next to him was Kilrog Deadeye, chieftain of the Bleeding Hollow clan. The name was not a familiar one, but one he had taken for himself. One eye fitted over the assembled company, the other sat, mangled and dead in truth, in its socket. If Gramash was young for a chieftain, then Kilrog was old for one. But it was clear to Durotan that despite his years and grizzled appearance, Kilrog was far from done with either life or leadership. Uneasy, Durotan turned his attention elsewhere. On Drekthar's left was the famous Ner'zhul of the Shadowmoon clan. For as long as Durotan could remember, Ner'zhul had led the shaman. Once Durotan had been permitted to attend a hunt at which Ner'zhul had been present, and the mastery the shaman had over his skills was shocking. While others grunted and labored to contact the elements, directing them powerfully without grace. Ner'zhul remained tranquil. The earth shook beneath him when he asked it. Lightning came from the skies to strike down where he directed. Fire, air, water, earth, and the elusive spirit of the wilds all called him companion and friend. He had not seen Ner'zhul interact with the ancestors, of course. No one but the shaman were to witness such things. But it was clear to Durotan that if the ancestors had not favored Ner'zhul, he would not have serenely carried power all this time. Ner'zhul's apprentice, however, Durotan did not like. Orgrim was sitting next to his boyhood friend, and seeing where Durotan's gaze led, leaned over and whispered, "I think Gul'dan would better serve his people if he were sent out as bait." Durotan looked away so that no one else would see him smile. He did not know how experienced Gul'dan was as a shaman. Surely he must have some ability, or else Ner'zhul would not have taken him on to succeed him. But he was not very prepossessing orc. Shorter than many, softer than most, with a short, bushy beard, he did not exemplify the orc as a warrior, but Durotan supposed that one did not have to be a hero to contribute. "Now that's one. She is a warrior born." Durotan looked in the direction that Orgrim had indicated, and his eyes widened slightly. Orgrim had spoken the truth. Standing tall and straight, her muscles rippled beneath her smooth brown skin in the firelight as she reached out and sliced a chunk of meat off the roasting Talbot carcass. The female in question seemed to Durotan to be the entome of all the orcs valued. She moved with the feral grace of one of the black wolves, and her tusks were small but sharpened to deadly points. Her long black hair was pulled back in an effervescent but attractive braid. Who is she?" Durotan murmured, his heart already sinking. Surely this magnificent female was a member of another clan. He would have noticed if such a beautiful, strong, supple, graceful had been in his own clan. Orgrim scoffed and slapped Durotan on the back. The sound and gesture caused several heads to turn in their direction, including Durotan realized that of the lovely female. Orgrim leaned in to whisper the words that made Durotan's spirit rise. "You undeserving dog. She is a frost wolf. I'd have claimed her for myself if she were my own clan." A frost wolf. How in the world had Durotan failed to notice such a treasure in his own clan? He turned his gaze from Orgrim's grinning visage to look at her again. He found her staring directly at him, their gazes locked. "Draka." The female started and turned away. Durotan blinked as if returning to himself. "Draka," he said quietly. No wonder he had not recognized her. "No, Orgrim, she was not a warrior born. She is a warrior made." Draka had been born sickly, her skin a pale fawn color rather than the healthy tree bark brown that marked most orcs. For most of his childhood, Durotan remembered the adults speaking of her in low whispers, as if one already on the way to join the ancestors. His own parents once spoke of her sadly, wondering what her family had done that the spirits would cause them such a frail child. It was soon after that Durotan realized, putting the pieces together, that Draka's family had been moved to the outskirts of the encampment. He had not seen much of her, busy as he was with his own duties. Draka had sliced off several chunks of meat and brought them back to her family. Durotan noticed two younglings sitting with the orcs, who presumably were her parents. Both looked fit and healthy. Feeling her gaze upon them, Draka turned her head and met his eyes steadily. Her nostril flared, and she sat up straighter, as if daring Durotan to look upon her with pity and compassion rather than admiration and respect. No, this one did not need any pity. By the grace of the spirits and the healing of the shaman and the power of the will, he could see burning in her brown eyes. She had cast off her childhood frailty to mature into this female version, this vision of female orc perfection. His breath escaped him with a whoosh as Orgrim elbowed him. Durotan glared at his childhood friend. "Stop gaping. It makes me want to put something in your mouth to shut it," Durotan grumbled. Durotan realized he had indeed been gaping, and that more than one knowing, grinning glance was coming his way. He returned his attention to the feast, and did not glance at Drake again for the rest of the night. But he dreamed of her. And when he awoke, he knew that she would be his. He was heir to the chieftaincy of one of the proudest orc clans. What female would deny him? "No," Draka said. Durotan was stunned. He had approached Draka the next morning, invited her to go hunting with him the next day, alone. Both knew what that meant. Male and female hunting in pair was a courtship ritual, and she had rebuffed him. It was so unexpected that he did not know how to react. She watched him almost contemptuously, her lips curving around her perfect tusks in a smirk. "Why not?" Durotan managed. "I am not of age," she replied. The way she phrased it made it sound more like an excuse than a reason. But Durotan would not be put off so easily. "I had intended this to be a courting hunt, that much is true," he said bluntly. "But if you are not of age, I will respect that. Still, I would like your company. Let this hunt be a hunt shared by two proud warriors. Nothing more." Now it was her turn to be startled. Durotan guessed that Draka had expected him to either push the point or leave in anger. She paused, her eyes wide, then she grinned. "I will come on such hunt, Durotan, son of Garad, leader of the Frostwolf clan." Durotan thought he had never been happier. This was vastly different from the usual hunt. He and Draka had set a brisk, lopping pace. All his challenges with Orgrim had given Durotan stamina, and for a moment he worried that he was going too fast. But Draka, born so fragile and now so strong, kept up with him. They did not speak much. There was little to say. They were on a hunt. They would find prey, kill it, and bring it back to their clan. The silence was easy and comfortable. He slowed as they moved into open territory and began to scan the ground. There was no snow on the earth, so tracking was not a simple job. It was not the simple job it was in the winter months, but Durotan knew what to look for. Disturbed grass, broken bush twigs, an indentation, however slight, on the soil. "Cleft hoofs," he said. He rose and scanned the horizon in the direction they had gone. Draka still crouched on the earth, her fingers daintily moving aside the foliage. "One is injured," she announced. Durotan turned to her. "I saw no blood." She shook her head. "No blood. But the pattern of the print tells me this." She pointed where he had looked. He saw nothing to alert him to an injured beast, and shook his head, puzzled. No, not this print. The next." And the one after that. She moved along carefully where she placed her She moved along, careful where she placed her feet, and suddenly Durotan saw what she had. The indentations of one hoof was slightly less deep than the other three. The beast was limping. He turned admiring eyes on her, and she flushed slightly. "It is easy to read," she said. "You would have found it yourself." Sorry for the... No, he admitted honestly. "I did not. I saw the prints, but I did not take the time to observe them in full detail. You did. You will make an excellent hunter one day." She straightened and looked at him proudly. Something warm and spontaneous and simplicitous, strengthening and weakening rushed through him. He was not one to pray, but now, as he looked at Draka standing before him, he sent a quick prayer to the spirits. "Let this female look agreeably on me." They followed the trail like wolves on the scent. Durotan had stopped leading. This female was his equal in tracking. They complemented one another well. He had the sharper eyes, but she looked more deeply at what he found. He wondered what it would be like to be fighting beside her. Their eyes on the earth before them, they lopped around at a sharp turn. He wondered what it would be like to... A great black wolf crouched snarling over the same animal they had been tracking. Whirled. For an endless instant, the three predators regarded one another. But even before the mighty beast had gathered itself to spring, Durotan had charged. The axe felt as nothing in his arm as he lifted and struck. It sank deep into the creature's torso, but Durotan felt the retaliation bite from yellow teeth crunch down on his arm. Pain, white-hot and shocking, coursed through him. He tore his arm free. It was harder this time to lift the axe with his arm pumping blood, but he did. The wolf had turned his attention fully upon Durotan, its yellow eyes boring into his, its mouth open in a roar. Its hot breath stank of rancid meat. At that instant, before the great jaws could close upon his face, Durotan heard a war cry. There was a fury of movement in the corner of his eye. Dreka sprung upon the beast, her long, ornated spear preceding herself. The wolf's head snapped back as the spear pierced its midsection. In the instance of inattention, Durotan hefted his axe again and brought it down as hard as he could. He felt it cut through the animal's body, down, striking earth, growing deep, lodging so firmly he could not pull it out immediately. He stepped back, panting. Draka stood beside him. He felt her warmth, her energy, her passion for the hunt as powerful as his. Together they stared at the mighty beast they had just slain. They had been taken unawares by an animal that usually requires several seasoned orcs to bring down, and they were still alive. Their foe lay dead, blood pooling beneath it, sliced in two by Durotan's axe, Draka's spear protruding from its heart. Durotan realized he would never be able to tell which of them had struck the true killing blow, and the thought made him ridiculously happy. He sat down hard. Draka was there, quickly washing the blood from his lacerated arm, only to mutter under her breath as more came. She tended him with healing salves and tightly wrapped bandages along with some bitter-tasting herbs she added to water and ordered him to drink. After a few moments, the dizziness went away. "Thank you," he said quietly. She nodded, not looking at him. Then a smile quirked one corner of her mouth. "What is so funny? I was not able to stand?" His voice was harsher than he intended it, and she lit up quickly, surprised at his tone. "Not at all. You fought well, Durotan. Many would have dropped their axe after such a blow." He felt oddly pleased by her comment, delivered as a factual statement rather than flattery. "Then what amuses you?" She grinned, meeting his eyes evenly. I know something, and you do not know it. But after this, I think I will tell you. He felt himself smiling too. I am honored. I told you yesterday that I was not of age for a courtship hunt. True? Well, when I said that, I knew I would come of age soon. I see, he said, though he didn't, not quite. Well, when will you become of age? Her smile broadened. Today, she said simply. He looked at her for a long moment, then with no word, pulled her to him and kissed her. Talgoth had been observing the orcs for some time. Now he withdrew from them, their bestial nature offending him. Being a Minari was better. Except for the female creatures with their leathery wings and tail, Minari slaked their lust with violence. Not coupling. He preferred it that way. He would in fact have preferred to have slain the two on the spot, but his master had been quite clear about intervening. There would be questions asked if these two did not return to their clan. And though they were unimportant as flies to him, flies could become a nuisance. Kil'jaeden wanted him only to observe and report back. Nothing more. And so, Talgoth would. Revenge, mused Kil'jaeden, like fruit on a tree, was sweetest when allowed to fully ripen. There had been moments of the long stretch of years when he had harbored doubts about being able to locate the renegade Eridar. The more Talgoth shared with him, however, the more confident and delighted Kil'jaeden grew. Talgoth had served him well. He had observed the pathetic so-called cities the once mighty Velen and his little handful of Eridar had created. He had observed how they lived, hunted like the creatures who called themselves orcs, putting grain into the ground with their own hands. He had watched them trade with the hulking, barely verbal creatures, treating them with a courtesy that was positively laughable. Talgoth sensed some echoes of former grandeur in their buildings and limited technology, but overall, Talgoth felt that Kil'jaeden would be pleased with how low his former friend had fallen. Draenei, they call themselves now. The exiles, and they had named for the world Draenor. Kil'jaeden realized that Talgoth was perplexed when, rather than focusing on Velen himself, Kil'jaeden wants to know more about the orcs. How were they organized? What were some of their customs? Who were their leaders? How were they chosen? What was important to them as a society, as individuals? But Talgoth's job was to report, not evaluate, and he answered his master to the best of his abilities. When at last Kil'jaeden had learned everything that Talgoth had learned, right down to the names of the two beasts rutting after their kill together, he was satisfied. For the moment, at least. At long last, revenge would be his. Velen and his upstart companions would be punished, but not quickly. Not with an army of enhanced Eridar to rend them to pieces of bloody pulp. That would be too merciful. Kil'jaeden wanted them dead, yes, but he wanted them broken, humiliated, crushed as utterly and completely as an insect beneath a bare-booted foot.